The twin suns of Vaelora burned above a world of shining towers and floating cities. Ships glided through the sky like silver birds, carrying messages between alien worlds. And somewhere in the middle of this strange beauty stood a single human, Ethan Cole. Ethan had never meant to come here. He was a repair technician on a cargo ship that had been caught in an ion storm. When his ship crashed near the Vaelorian capital, he thought his life was over. But fate had other plans. The Vaelorians were tall, graceful, and silver-skinned beings with glowing eyes. They saw humans as primitive creatures, useful but not equals. Yet when their main power reactor began to fail, Ethan offered to help. No one believed he could fix alien technology, but he did, using simple logic and tools that the aliens had never thought of. He saved thousands of lives that day. And that was how he found himself standing before the Queen of Vaelora. The throne room was larger than a stadium, its walls alive with moving light. Guards in shining armor stood like statues, and at the center, on a floating throne made of crystal, sat Queen Seraphis. Her voice was calm, but filled with power. "Human, you have done what none of my scientists could," she said. "You saved my world." Ethan bowed, unsure of what to say. He felt small under her gaze, like a grain of sand before a mountain. The Queen stood, her gown shimmering with stars. Everyone expected her to offer a reward, perhaps wealth or safe passage home, but instead, she said words that froze the entire court. "Ethan Cole, I have a request," she said. "You must mate with my daughter and give her a child." The room fell silent. Every alien eye turned toward the Queen in shock. Ethan thought he had misheard. I'm sorry," he whispered. The Queen stepped closer, her eyes glowing faintly blue. "You heard me, human. It is not a command of Heir, but of survival." Ethan's heart pounded. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Her daughter, Princess Lyra, stood beside the throne. She looked like her mother, but younger, her skin faintly golden instead of silver. Her expression was filled with anger and shame. "Mother, this is madness," she cried, but the Queen raised her hand, and everyone fell silent again. "The bloodline of Vaelora is dying," the Queen said softly. Her voice trembled, though her face stayed calm. "Our DNA weakens each generation. The radiation from our dying sun has destroyed our fertility. No Vaelorian male can give my daughter life." Ethan shook his head. "And you think a human can?" he asked. The Queen nodded slowly. "Your kind has survived what others cannot. You adapt, evolve, and endure. Your genetic structure might be the key to saving my people." The silence felt heavy. Ethan didn't know if this was a nightmare or a joke. The Queen wasn't smiling. No one was. Even Princess Lyra looked pale and furious. "I will not be used like a breeding tool," she said, turning away. "You already are one," the Queen whispered coldly. Guards shifted uneasily. The Queen's gaze returned to Ethan. "You are a hero, human," she said. "But now you must become a savior." Ethan took a step back. "I won't do it," he said, his voice shaking. "Find another way." The Queen didn't move. Her eyes flashed brighter and the air around her throne began to hum. "There is no other way," she said. "If you refuse, humanity itself may suffer the cost." The words made no sense, but her tone was deadly serious. "What do you mean?" Ethan asked. The Queen leaned close, her shadow falling over him. "Your species has more connections to Vaelora than you know," she whispered. "Refuse, and your world will be erased from our records, from our protection." Ethan's breath caught. He realized this wasn't just about him or one alien child. It was about two civilizations, one dying and one unaware of the danger waiting beyond the stars. The Queen stepped back and raised her hand. "You have one night to decide," she said. "If you accept, you will live as royalty. If you refuse, you may never see Earth again." Guards took Ethan away to a chamber made of light and glass. From the window, he could see the endless sky of Vaelora, full of strange beauty and silent danger. He sat on the cold floor, his mind spinning, a human among aliens, asked to do the impossible. And in the distance, far above the palace towers, a shadow moved, a figure watching him from the darkness. It was the princess, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the night. She whispered softly, "You don't understand yet, human, but none of us are free." The story had just begun. The night on Vaelora never truly became dark. The twin suns dimmed, but their light still touched the clouds, turning them silver blue. Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat by the glowing window of his chamber, watching flying ships trace lines of light across the horizon. His mind spun with confusion. A queen's request to give her daughter a child. It sounded like madness, yet her words carried the weight of desperation. When dawn came, Two guards entered without a word. Their armor reflected the morning light like mirrors. "The Queen summons you," one said in a flat voice. Ethan followed them through long glass corridors where energy flowed like rivers beneath the floor. Every Vaelorian they passed stopped and stared at him. The strange creature from Earth. Some looked with curiosity, others with disgust, but a few, especially the older ones, looked almost hopeful, as if he carried something sacred. The throne room was quieter this time. The Queen sat alone, her hands resting on a floating orb that pulsed with faint blue light. "You have not answered me, human," she said calmly. Ethan took a deep breath. "Because I don't understand," he replied. "Why me? Why not your own kind?" The Queen's eyes dimmed, and, for the first time, Ethan saw sadness behind her strength. "Our bloodline is ending," she said softly. "Our men are sterile. Our offspring die before birth. The radiation from our twin sons poisoned our DNA long ago." She lifted the orb, and it projected an image into the air, a swirl of glowing strands, twisting and breaking apart. "This is Vaelorian DNA," she said, "and this is yours." Another swirl appeared beside it, human DNA, stable and complete. Then both images overlapped, forming a perfect pattern. "Do you see, human? Your genes can heal ours?" Ethan stared at the glowing patterns, trying to process what he saw. "You mean you want to create hybrids?" he said slowly. "We want to survive," the Queen corrected him. "We want to live, to continue, to remember what we were." She stood and walked toward him, her long robe whispered across the floor. "You are the first human to touch our son and live," she said. "Perhaps fate chose you for this." Before Ethan could answer, another voice echoed from the side hall. "Fate or desperation?" Princess Lyra stepped out, her golden skin glowing faintly. Her eyes, sharp and tired, looked between her mother and Ethan. "You talk of destiny, but all I see is a prisoner," she said. "You would chain a man to your will because you cannot accept extinction." The Queen's tone turned cold. "You forget your duty, daughter." "And you forget mercy," Lyra shot back, her voice trembling with anger. Ethan stood frozen between them, watching mother and daughter face each other like enemies. The Queen turned away. "Take her to the medical chamber," she ordered her guards. "Let her see what happens when duty is ignored." Lyra glared at her mother but didn't resist. She looked at Ethan briefly, and in that moment he saw fear. Not anger, not pride, but real fear. As the guards led her away, she whispered something he barely heard. "Don't believe everything she says." Later, Ethan was escorted to the Royal Medical Facility, a vast hall filled with machines that hummed like whispers. There, the Vaelorian scientists scanned him, studied his blood, his skin, his DNA. They didn't speak to him. They only observed, their faces unreadable. One of them, an old scientist with glowing blue veins, handed him a small metallic disc. "Keep this," he whispered quickly. "It records truth." Before Ethan could ask, the man turned away and disappeared into the crowd. That night in his chamber, Ethan examined the disc. He placed it on the table and a beam of light projected an image. A message left by the same scientist. The man's voice was trembling. "If you are hearing this, human, then the Queen has already chosen you. But know this, her plan is not to save her people. It is to create something far more dangerous." Ethan's heart pounded as the message continued. "The princess is the key. Her DNA was modified years ago. She carries something not entirely Vaelorian. They call it the Genesis Code, a weapon disguised as life." The message ended, and the disc went dark. Ethan stared at it, feeling a chill run down his spine. The Queen wanted him to mate with the princess, not to save her bloodline, but to awaken a new one. Something powerful, something unknown. Outside, thunder rolled across the alien sky. Ethan looked out the window again and saw the royal tower glowing in the distance. He saw a figure standing on the balcony, Princess Lyra. Her face turned toward the stars. She looked lonely, trapped between destiny and fear, and in that moment, Ethan realized she was not his captor. She was another prisoner, just like him. The Queen's words echoed in his mind. "You are the key to our survival." But now he understood. Survival might not be the only thing she wanted. The truth was bigger, darker, and far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. And the real story of Vaelora was only beginning. The palace of Vaelora was a maze of light and shadow. Its long corridors shimmered like liquid glass, and every doorway hid a secret. Ethan had been kept inside for days, watched by guards who never spoke. But that morning, something changed. Two scientists entered his room and told him to follow. They said the Queen wanted him tested again, deeper this time. Ethan walked behind them, through golden halls that led below the palace. The air grew colder with every step. When the doors opened, he stepped into a vast chamber filled with strange machines. Blue energy flowed through tubes like glowing veins, and in the center, surrounded by glass, floated something alive. It was a figure, or maybe a body, a woman's form suspended in glowing liquid with silver hair drifting around her. Ethan froze. "Who is that?" he whispered. The older scientist glanced at him, his face pale. "That, human, is the first experiment," he said softly. "She was meant to be perfect." Ethan stepped closer, his heart pounding. The figure inside the glass looked almost like Princess Lyra, but her skin was too pale, too still. "What happened to her?" Ethan asked. "She wasn't born," the scientist replied. "She was built." Ethan's stomach turned cold. "Built?" The man nodded. "The Queen used the Genesis code. She tried to combine Vaelorian DNA with artificial intelligence, but it failed. The body lived, but the mind never woke." Ethan stared at the motionless figure, her eyes half open but empty. It was like looking at a ghost, a reminder of what the Queen was willing to do. He turned to the scientist. "Why are you showing me this?" The man's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because she will try again, with the princess. And with you." Ethan stepped back, shocked. He remembered the recording from the disc. The Genesis code. And a weapon disguised as life. It was true. The Queen wasn't just trying to save her race. She was trying to create something new, something she could control. Just then, alarms blared, red light flashing through the chamber. Guards rushed in, shouting, "Containment breach!" The scientists panicked, sealing the doors. The glass capsule in the center began to crack. Ethan watched in horror as the liquid inside began to boil. The figure inside twitched. Her eyes flickered open for the first time. A faint light glowed within her chest. "She's waking up!" someone screamed. The Queen's voice echoed through the speakers, calm and powerful. "Seal the chamber. No one leaves." Ethan's instincts kicked in. He grabbed the nearest control panel and forced the door open with brute strength. Sparks flew, alarms roared, and smoke filled the air. He ran through the hallway, coughing, his heart racing. Behind him, he heard an explosion, the chamber collapsing. He reached an elevator made of crystal and slammed the controls. As it rose toward the upper levels, Ethan saw flashes of memory. The Queen's cold eyes, the princess's warning, the lifeless woman in the tank. When the doors opened, he stepped into silence. The upper palace looked peaceful, as if nothing had happened. But when he turned a corner, he stopped. Princess Lyra was waiting for him. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "You went below," she said quietly. Ethan nodded, breathless. "I saw her. The failed experiment." Lyra looked away, her voice shaking. "That was my sister," she whispered. "The one before me." Ethan stared at her, unable to speak. She stepped closer, tears shining in her eyes. "The Queen never told you the whole truth. She created me after the first failed. I was meant to replace her." Ethan felt the weight of her words. "You mean you're not completely Vaelorian?" "No," she said softly. "Part of me is human, from someone who came before you." The air grew heavy with silence. Ethan felt a strange connection to her, something beyond word. So Lyra looked at him with fear and hope mixed together. "My mother doesn't want to save the Vaelorians. She wants to rule them forever," she said, "and she thinks I'm the key." Ethan clenched his fists. "Then we have to stop her." Lyra shook her head. "We can't. Not yet. She watches everything, every word, every thought." She handed him a small device, glowing faintly blue. "If you really want to help, meet me tonight in the Eastern Tower." Ethan nodded. For the first time since arriving on Vaelora, he felt a purpose beyond survival, not to obey, but to uncover the truth. He looked out the window. The twin suns were setting, their light turning the city golden, and far below, the ruins of the Forbidden Chamber still smoked in the distance. Somewhere beneath those broken walls, something unnatural had awakened. The Queen believed she could control life itself, but Ethan now knew the truth. Life was never meant to be controlled, and as the night approached, destiny began to move again, one step closer to war. The night on Vaelora was calm but uneasy. The twin moons hung over the silver city like watching eyes. Ethan walked quietly through the palace corridors, his heart beating fast. Every step echoed softly against the glowing floor. He clutched the small blue device Princess Lyra had given him. He didn't know what it was, only that it pulsed like a heartbeat in his hand. When he reached the Eastern Tower, the air felt colder. The walls shimmered faintly, and strange symbols moved across the surface like living light. Lyra stood there, waiting near a tall window that opened to the endless sky. Her golden eyes glowed softly in the moonlight. She turned when she saw him, her expression half relief, half fear. "You came," she whispered. "You asked me to," Ethan replied. He noticed her hands were shaking. "Are you all right?" he asked. She gave a small, bitter laugh. "No one is all right in this palace, human." They stood in silence for a moment, the wind carrying the faint hum of the city below. Finally, she looked at him with eyes that carried a sadness too old for her face. "You saw the forbidden chamber," she said. Ethan nodded slowly. "I saw what your mother is doing. I saw your sister." Lyra's face tightened in pain. "She wasn't my sister by choice," she said softly. "She was my mother's creation, a test before me." She looked at the sky as if searching for courage. "Do you know what it means to be born without a soul, human?" Ethan didn't answer. Lyra touched her chest. "The queen gave me life, but not freedom," she said. "Half my blood is Vaelorian, the other half, something else." Ethan remembered the scientist's message, the words Genesis code, and his pulse quickened. "You mean human?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, my mother used DNA from a man who once visited Vaelora long ago, before your people even knew our world existed." Ethan felt dizzy. "So you've always had human blood, and because of that, I see things others cannot," she said. "Memories that aren't mine, oceans, skies, music. Your world lives inside my dreams." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "But my mother doesn't care about dreams. She wants power. She believes if I carry a child with you, the child will awaken the Genesis energy, life itself." Ethan frowned. "She said it was about saving your people." Lyra shook her head. "That's the lie. She doesn't want to save anyone. She wants to rule forever. My child would not be a savior. It would be a weapon." The words sank into Ethan like ice. He stared at her, realizing how deeply trapped she was. "Then why tell me this?" he asked. Lyra looked down, her voice barely a whisper. "Because I don't want to be her weapon." She turned her face toward him, eyes glistening with tears that shimmered like tiny stars. "I want to be free, Ethan. I want to live my own life, not the one she wrote for me." For a long time, they said nothing. The tower was silent except for the faint hum of energy flowing through the walls. Then Lyra reached out and placed the small blue device into Ethan's hand again. "It's called a memory key," she said. "It connects minds. If you use it, you'll see what I see." Ethan hesitated. "You trust me with this?" "I have no one else to trust," she said softly. He pressed the device, and suddenly, light exploded behind his eyes. Images rushed through his mind. Oceans, forests, laughter, then screams. He saw Vaelora's twin sons dying, turning black, and the queen standing before a massive machine pulsing with energy. He heard her voice saying, "Life and power must become one." Then he saw Lyra as a child, crying as scientists surrounded her, attaching glowing wires to her body. He felt her pain, her loneliness, her fear. When the light faded, he stumbled back, gasping for breath. Lyra steadied him. "Now you understand," she said, "why I can't obey her." Ethan's chest burned with anger. "She's using you. Both of us," he said. Lyra nodded, "and she will never stop unless we stop her." Her eyes met his, fierce and full of unspoken courage. "Tomorrow there will be a royal ceremony," she said. "She will announce that I have chosen you. That's when we act." Ethan looked at her in disbelief. "Act? How?" "I have a plan," she whispered. "But if she discovers it, we both die." Before he could ask more, the sound of footsteps echoed from the corridor. Lyra grabbed his hand. "Go now," she whispered urgently. "She cannot know we met." Ethan hesitated. "Lyra, what happens if we fail?" She smiled faintly. "Then the stars will remember us as the ones who tried." He ran through the dark halls as the palace lights dimmed for night cycle. When he reached his chamber, he looked at the memory key glowing faintly in his palm. The truth was heavier than he could bear. The queen wasn't just dangerous. She was playing with the power of creation itself, and Lyra, the princess caught between two worlds, was the only one brave enough to defy her. Outside, thunder rolled again over the alien sky. The storm was coming, and for the first time, Ethan knew. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about freedom, love, and the right to choose one's own destiny. The morning of the royal ceremony arrived with golden light spilling through the palace walls. Drums echoed across the shining towers, and banners of silver flame waved in the wind. The whole city of Vaelora gathered to witness what they believed was a sacred union. The human who saved their world, and the princess who would save their race. Ethan stood before a mirror, dressed in elegant robes of white and blue. Servants had prepared him like a symbol, not a man. They called him the Chosen One. But inside, he felt like a prisoner wearing chains made of silk. Guards followed him everywhere, their eyes cold and silent. When the doors to the throne hall opened, the sound of music filled the air. He walked through the long path lined with golden statues, each one depicting the royal bloodline of Vaelora. At the far end sat Queen Seraphis, calm and powerful, her silver crown glowing like a second sun. Princess Lyra stood beside her, dressed in gold, her face calm but her eyes filled with quiet rebellion. The queen rose and raised her hand. "People of Vaelora," she declared, her voice echoey, neighing through the chamber, "today marks the beginning of rebirth." The crowd bowed. "This human has done what none of our kind could. He will join with my daughter, and together they will create the next era of life." Ethan felt his stomach twist. He glanced at Lyra, who stood perfectly still, but her fingers trembled slightly. He remembered her words from last night. "When she announces the union, that's when we act." But he still didn't know what her plan truly was. The queen turned toward him and smiled. "Step forward, human," she commanded. He did, forcing himself to move. She placed a glowing emblem on his chest. The seal of the Genesis Pact. It burned faintly, seeping warmth into his skin. "With this mark, you are bound to Vaelora," she said, "and your fate belongs to me." At that moment, Lyra spoke, her voice calm but sharp as glass. "No, mother," she said. The hall fell silent. The queen turned slowly, her expression turning to ice. "What did you say?" "I said no," Lyra repeated, stepping forward. "I will not be your weapon, and I will not carry a child for your empire." The crowd gasped. Guards tightened their grip on their weapons. The queen's eyes burned with blue fire. "You dare defy your blood?" she hissed. "I defy your cruelty," Lyra said, her voice trembling but strong. "You've destroyed everything that made us living beings. You've turned life into a tool." Ethan's heart raced. He wanted to run to her, but the guards moved between them. The queen raised her hand, and the air in the hall began to hum. The walls vibrated with energy. "You forget who gave you life, my daughter," she said coldly. "You forget who owns you." Suddenly, the memory key in Ethan's pocket pulsed with light. He pulled it out without thinking, and it activated by itself. A beam of light shot upward, projecting images in front of the entire court. They saw the experiments, the lifeless bodies, the failed creations in the forbidden chamber. Gasps filled the hall. "These are lies," the queen shouted, her voice cracking with fury. But the people could see the truth. Their perfect ruler was creating monsters. Ethan stepped forward, his voice rising over the noise. "You say you want to save your people," he shouted, "but you only want to control them. You fear death so much that you destroy life itself." The queen's expression turned dark and empty. "You have no right to speak to me, human," she said. "I gave you a chance to be a god, and you choose to be a fool." She snapped her fingers. A wave of energy struck the floor, and the ground split open. Guards surrounded Ethan, pointing glowing blades at his chest. Lyra screamed, "Stop! Don't hurt him!" But the queen only smiled. "He is no longer needed," she said. "The Genesis process can continue without him." Ethan looked at Lyra, his heart pounding. "Run!" he shouted. She hesitated for a second, then grabbed a guard's weapon and swung it. Blue sparks flew, and the hall erupted into chaos. The crowd scattered as alarms blared and lights flickered. Ethan fought his way through the guards, blocking strikes, dodging energy blasts. He wasn't a soldier, but desperation gave him strength. Lyra ran toward him, and they met near the shattered seal. The queen stood above them, surrounded by flames of blue light. "You can't escape me," she said, her voice booming. "I see everything. I am everything." Her power filled the hall like a storm, breaking walls and tearing through the air. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand. "We have to go," he shouted. They ran through the smoke, because the queen's laughter echoed behind them. "You can run, but you cannot hide from destiny," she cried. Outside, the palace trembled, explosions lighting the sky. The rebellion that had long been whispering in the dark was now rising. Ethan and Lyra escaped into the maze of burning streets. Behind them, the queen's wrath shook the heavens. Lyra looked back once, tears on her face. "We started something we can't stop now," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "Then we finish it," he said. Far above, lightning crossed the alien sky, and the first spark of war began to burn across the stars. The city of Vaelora burned beneath a darkened sky. The twin suns were hidden behind clouds of smoke, turning the once bright world into a storm of fire and light. The queen's army searched the streets, hunting for the princess and the human who had defied her. Every building echoed with alarms, every shadow carried fear. Ethan and Lyra moved through the ruins of an abandoned district. Broken towers leaned like dying giants, and the air smelled of metal and dust. They had been running for days, hiding among the lower levels where no royal guard dared to go. Ethan's body was bruised, his clothes torn, but he kept going because Lyra needed him. She was weaker now, her golden glow dimming each day. She sat against a cracked wall, her hand resting on her stomach. It's growing faster than it should, she whispered. Ethan knelt beside her, his heart pounding. You mean the child? She nodded, her eyes soft but frightened. Half of me is human, half Vaelorian, but what's growing inside is something beyond both. Ethan felt a chill run through him. You're saying the Queen was right about the power? She was right about the energy, Lyra said quietly, but wrong about what it means. She saw it as a weapon, but I feel it. It's life, pure and unbound. For a moment, silence surrounded them, broken only by the sound of distant thunder. Ethan looked at her, seeing not a princess or an experiment, but a woman carrying something extraordinary. We'll protect it, he said firmly, no matter what it takes. Lyra smiled faintly. You still believe in choice, even after all this. It's all we have left, he said. That night, as Lyra slept, Ethan kept watch. He could see her light flickering faintly beneath her skin, glowing like starlight beneath the surface. He remembered the Queen's words. Your child will awaken the Genesis energy. But now, seeing Lyra, he understood something deeper. This wasn't about creation or domination, it was about balance, about two species learning to exist together. Suddenly, he heard footsteps approaching. Ethan grabbed a piece of metal, ready to fight. From the shadows stepped an old figure, the same scientist who had given him the recording disc. His blue veins shimmered faintly under the dim light. You survived, Ethan whispered. Barely, the man said, coughing softly. The Queen's wrath burned half the city, but she has lost control of her own machines. The Genesis energy is spreading. Ethan frowned. Spreading? Through her experiments, through the network. It's alive now, reaching for anything that carries life. It's unstable. He looked at Lyra and sighed. And it's drawn to her child. Lyra stirred, her golden eyes opening. I heard you, she said softly. So that's why I feel it moving, like it's listening. The scientist nodded. Your child is becoming the center of the Genesis field. If the Queen captures you, she can use it to reshape every living being on Vaelora. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then we can't let her find us. You can't run forever, the scientist said, but there might be a way to contain the energy before it consumes you. He handed Ethan a small cube glowing with green light. This is a stabilizer. If placed inside the old reactor core beneath the palace, it can absorb the energy from the child and neutralize the Queen's control. But See, it starts, the palace will collapse. Ethan looked at the device, so it's a suicide mission. The scientist's eyes softened. Sometimes, saving life means risking your own. When the old man left, Lyra turned to Ethan. You're thinking of doing it, she said. Ethan nodded slowly. If it's the only way to stop her, I have to. Lyra took his hand. No, we do it together. Her voice trembled, but her eyes burned with courage. This child isn't just ours. It's a bridge between human and Vaelorian, between creation and destruction. It deserves a future. At dawn, they moved through the tunnels leading back toward the palace. Outside, the Queen's machines marched through the burning streets, scanning for their heat signatures. Her voice echoed through the communication towers. My daughter, surrender. You cannot hide from your destiny. But Lyra didn't stop. She pressed her hand against her stomach, whispering softly, You'll see the stars, little one. I promise. When they reached the old reactor core beneath the palace, the walls glowed with unstable light. Energy crackled through the air, shaking the ground. Ethan set the stabilizer on the central platform, wires sparking as it activated. Lyra winced, clutching her belly. It's reacting, she gasped. Hold on, Ethan said, grabbing her hand. The light from her body flared bright, merging with the core's energy. The room shook violently, cracks spreading across the walls. Above them, the Queen felt it. The sudden surge of power. She stood on her throne, her eyes widening. No, she's draining the Genesis field, she hissed. She summoned her guards, her voice rising with fury. Find them! Bring me the child! But it was too late. Deep below, Ethan and Lyra stood together in the heart of chaos. Energy surrounded them like a storm of stars, their hands intertwined, their eyes locked. Whatever happens, Ethan whispered, we end this together. Lyra smiled through tears. Together. The reactor exploded in light, reaching the sky like a new sunrise, and in that blinding glow, the legend of the Child of Two Worlds was born. The explosion lit up the whole planet. From space, it looked like a new star had been born above Vaelora. The shockwave tore through the city, turning towers into dust and machines into ash. But deep beneath the ruins, in the heart of the reactor, two lives still burned bright. Ethan opened his eyes to darkness. His body ached, his lungs filled with dust. He pushed broken metal aside and saw faint golden light glowing beside him. Lyra lay on the floor, weak but alive, her skin shimmering with the soft light of dawn. Her voice was faint but steady. It's time, she whispered. Ethan's eyes widened. You mean, now? She nodded. The child is coming. The ground above them shook again, the Queen's forces closing in. Machines crawled through the ruins like steel spiders, scanning for life. Ethan tore strips from his robe and made a small place for Lyra to rest. He held her hand as she trembled, the air around her pulsing with strange energy. Light spilled from her skin like flowing gold. He could feel the heat, not burning, but alive. You're going to make it, Ethan whispered, trying to smile. You're wrong, she said weakly, but he will. Her eyes met his, full of love and pain. Promise me, no matter what happens, protect him. Ethan's throat tightened. We'll protect him together. Lyra shook her head slowly, tears sliding down her face. You still don't understand, Ethan. The energy in me. It's too much. I won't survive it. Ethan gripped her hand tighter, refusing to believe. There has to be a way. I won't lose you. But before he could speak again, a deep voice filled the chamber. Cold, powerful, merciless. You already have. The Queen stood at the broken entrance, surrounded by a dozen armored guards. Her eyes glow, and with blinding blue fire, her robe torn and her crown cracked, yet her presence was as terrifying as ever. You destroyed my palace, you stole my daughter, and now you try to defy destiny, she said, her voice echoing like thunder. But destiny always returns to me. Ethan stood between her and Lyra. Stay back, he said, his voice shaking. The Queen smiled faintly. You think you can stop me, human? She raised her hand and a wave of energy threw him across the floor. Pain exploded through his body, but he forced himself to stand again. Maybe I can't, he said, but she can. Lyra rose slowly, her golden light spreading across the walls. Her eyes no longer looked afraid. They looked ancient, filled with calm power. Mother, she said softly. This ends now. The Queen stepped closer. You are my creation, my legacy, she hissed. You are nothing without me. Then let me show you how wrong you are, Lyra whispered. The energy around her flared like a sun. The Queen screamed, summoning her power, blue fire colliding with golden light. The entire chamber shook as the two forces met. Ethan shielded his eyes as lightning filled the air. He could feel the power tearing reality apart. The Queen roared. You can't destroy me. I am the beginning and the end, Lyra's voice answered through the storm. No, you are just afraid of what comes after. The ground split beneath them, molten light pouring through the cracks. Lyra looked back at Ethan one last time. Take him and go, she whispered. Ethan shook his head. I'm not leaving you. You must, she said, smiling faintly, because our child deserves to see the stars. She reached out, touched his face gently, and her glow grew so bright that it blinded him. Ethan stumbled backward, clutching a small bundle, the newborn child, wrapped in silver cloth. The Queen's scream echoed through the world as Lyra released her full power. The explosion of light swept through the palace and into the sky. Every machine, every weapon, every trace of the Queen's control vanished in an instant. When the light faded, the Queen was gone, and Lyra was gone too. Only silence remained. Ethan walked through the ruins, holding the child close. The baby's skin shimmered faintly, half gold, half human tan. He looked up at the sky. The clouds clearing, the twin suns rising again. He whispered softly, Your mother saved 2 worlds. Years later, legends spread across the galaxy. They spoke of a child born from fire and hope, a child who carried the strength of humanity and the heart of Vaelora. Some said he would grow to unite the scattered worlds. Others said he would awaken the stars themselves. But Ethan never cared for legends. He lived quietly on a distant moon, raising the child alone. Sometimes, when the night was silent, he could still hear Lyra's voice carried by the wind. You'll see the stars, little one. And as he looked up at the endless sky, he whispered back, he already does. The child of 2 worlds slept peacefully in his arms, a bridge between life and light, between endings and beginnings, and somewhere far beyond. The stars, the spirit of Lyra shone brighter than any sun. Her love had changed the galaxy forever, and humanity, once lost among the stars, had finally found its place again.